If you're watching this right now, don't scroll away. Because what happened to this single dad veteran, what he went through and how he stood back up will stay with you long after this video ends. So before we begin, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one story that reminds us why we never, ever give up. The night was pitch black over the Afghan mountains when Sergeant Luke Harris, callsign Falcon, was betrayed by his own unit. The chopper blades roared above him, drowning out his shouts. One of the men, someone he once called brother, grabbed him by the vest and snarled, "Orders changed. You're not coming back." Before Luke could react, the world flipped upside down. The helicopter door slid open, the cold air bit into his skin, and in a blur of rage and disbelief, he was thrown out into the darkness below. The impact should have killed him. The drop was at least 200 feet. But when Luke opened his eyes, coughing dust and dirt, his body wasn't broken. He felt pain, but no bones were shattered. Somehow, against all odds, he stood up. The mountains were silent, except for the faint sound of the helicopter disappearing into the distance. He had been betrayed, left for dead, and yet, he was alive. Back home, months later, Luke's life was in ruins. The army discharged him under false pretenses. His savings were gone. His wife had left years earlier when the deployments got too long, leaving him with his 8-year-old daughter, Emily, the only light in his world. He'd promised her he'd never let anything bad happen to them. But now, they were one step away from losing their small rented home. Luke found work where he could, loading trucks at night, fixing fences by day. His hands bled, his back ached, but Emily's smile kept him going. Every night she'd whisper, "Daddy, when you dream, do you still fly?" And he'd smile, even though inside, the memory of that fall haunted him. "Yeah, sweetheart," he'd say softly. "I still fly." But life wasn't done testing him. One winter evening, Luke came home from work to find their landlord waiting at the door. The man shoved an eviction notice into his hands. "2 days," he said coldly. "You're behind on rent again." Luke tried to reason, but the man turned away. Emily watched from the window, clutching her stuffed rabbit. That night, Luke broke down for the first time in years. He sat on the porch, staring at the sky. "Why me?" he whispered. "Why keep me alive that day, just to take everything away now?" He looked down at the dog tags around his neck, the same ones that had once meant pride. The next morning, a truck pulled up outside. Out stepped a woman in a military uniform, Captain Mara Lewis. She had served with Luke's old unit before everything went wrong. "Luke Harris," she said. "You need to come with me." He hesitated. "I'm done with that life," he muttered. But she handed him a file sealed, marked confidential. Inside were photos, reports, and one truth that hit harder than any fall: his brothers had been part of an illegal op, and Luke had been thrown out of that helicopter to silence him. "You were supposed to die," Mara said quietly. "But you didn't. You survived. And now, we can clear your name." Luke wanted to believe her, but trust didn't come easy anymore. Still, when Emily tugged his sleeve and said, "Daddy, maybe this time the sky won't hurt you," he made his choice. He went with Mara. The investigation took months. Luke relived every moment, every betrayal, every scar. But through it all, he found something he hadn't felt in years: purpose. His testimony exposed the corruption that had destroyed his life. The men who betrayed him were arrested. And when the truth came out, the army publicly restored his honor. On the day of the ceremony, Luke stood on the same kind of tarmac he once fell from. Emily stood beside him, holding his hand as the flag fluttered above them. The general saluted him. "Sergeant Harris, you fell from the sky, but you never hit the ground. You're what this uniform stands for." Tears welled in Luke's eyes. For the first time, the weight he'd carried finally lifted. He looked down at Emily, smiling through the emotion. "We made it, kiddo," he whispered. That night, after everyone left, Luke stood under the stars again. The wind was cold, but it didn't bite the same way it used to. He closed his eyes, remembering the fall, the darkness, and how somehow, he had stood back up. If you're still watching this, let Luke's story remind you, no matter how hard life throws you down, What matters is that you stand back up. Because sometimes, the reason you survive the fall is so you can help others rise too. So if this story moved you, take a second, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs hope tonight. Because you never know, they might be standing on the edge, waiting for a reason to keep going.